Morning everyone. So I've decided to do a little video on how I like to clean vinyl records. I find that obviously a lot of people are collecting vinyl, and a lot of these will come from unknown sources, charity shops, or you might pick them up from a friend or Facebook Marketplace, things like that. And generally they come in varying states, should we say. I think that a lot of the stuff you see if you get off Discogs and things like that, they're generally accurately described for the condition and how clean they are. I don't really have a problem with that. It's most of the time the items that I get from unknown sources. So due to that, I like to give anything that comes in the door from places like that a good clean and a dry and sort it out before I put it on my record player, because it prolongs the life of your stylus. It sounds a hell of a lot better once it's clean, and it looks better as well, let's be honest. You don't want a manky record going on there. So this is a kit that I use. So first thing is a cleaning solution. So I make this cleaning solution up myself. It lasts, it's only a little bottle obviously, but that probably lasts me about 10-15 records. It's down for a top up, but what's in here is 4:1 IPA, so isopropyl alcohol, 99% or whatever. You can get it from most pharmacies, eBay, things like that. This is 4:1, so I fill that a quarter of the way up and then top it up the rest of the time with distilled water, which is what this is here. And what I do is a teeny little bit of scent-free natural dishwashing solution. So in America they use Dawn or whatever, but I think Eco is the best one that I use. It's got no colour, it's got no scent. It is pure dishwashing solution, so it acts as a bit of a degreaser, but you only need a tiny bit. And what I do is give this a good shake, and it bubbles up a little bit, but so be it. It is what it is. I've done this for years. This works fine. I've got plenty of records that have gone through this process, and they play amazing. There's no issues whatsoever. So obviously this is probably going to trigger a few people who are deep into their vinyl cleaning lifestyle, but this is for the person at home in the kitchen with things you might have around the house. I mean, if you're going to go buy all this, what's all this? A tenner, if that, and it'll last you for years. So second one I have is a paintbrush, and this is for putting the record on, just to aid holding it. If you get one that's thinner than the spindle, it can wobble about, so there's a little mark on this actually where the records have been sitting, so that's what that's for. I use a soft natural bristle toothbrush, which I got from Boots for like 90p. I use a carafe here, or whatever this is called. I think at one point there was some kind of cheesecake or something in this, but that was a long time ago. That's been eaten. So I'll explain what this is for in a bit. And the most important thing I have is lint-free cloths. Okay, so these are, a friend of mine got me these. I'm not entirely sure where, but these are absolutely lint-free. So you can cut these. There's no lint, there's no fluff, there's no nothing. And these absolutely grade A lint-free cloths. This is the most important thing. And I use 3 of them every time. And then when I've done my little cycle, I put them through the washing machine and they're ready to go again. Or to be honest with you, if they're not that mucky, you can just put them on a drying rack or something. But I always find it's better to start off with clean cloths. And the last thing is distilled water. So if you don't know what distilled water is, water that has been produced by boiling normal water or any water, and the steam goes up to a cold pipe work or something like that, condenses back to water, and that is what distilled water is. It's important to use this rather than tap water, because tap water's got a lot of minerals in it. It's got, depending on where you live, it could be hard or soft, and it's going to leave watermarks, it's going to leave residue on your records, which is what we're trying to avoid in the first place. So, and the last thing you need is a record. So today we're going to be cleaning a copy of Rainbow Rising that I picked up at my local British Heart Foundation. I think I paid about £3 for it, but scratch wise it's not too bad. Dirt wise, fingerprints, things like that, it's a bit minging, and it shows when you play it as well. So because vinyl is a physical media, the needle has to sit into the groove, and if there's crap in there and fluff and dust and dirt and bits and bobs, it can affect how it sounds. So the high tones, bass, I find honestly is the main thing that's affected by dirt. You can't cure scratches, obviously, scratches is scratches, there's nothing I can do about it. with the cleaning solution. So I suppose that comes down to trying to select the best condition record you can in the first place, and dirt doesn't really matter. So so let's move to the kitchen and I'll show you what we're going to do first. Right, so we've got our record, and this is particularly manky, this one. I'm not sure if it'll come out on the camera, but there is dust, muck, dirt, all sorts on this. It's relatively scratch free, but generally it's a bit manky. So I'm probably do about 3 or 4 records today. I generally do about 3 or 4 at a time because the cloths can get a bit of dirt on them and then it kind of defeats the object. So that's kind of what I limit myself to. So first thing I do is get my carafe, and I'm going to fill that with distilled water. And this is for once you have washed the record, I wipe it down with distilled water as a final thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some of our solution all on the record. You can use a spray if you want, but I just didn't have a spray bottle. And then we're going to clean it with a toothbrush, pick it up with a spindle, and then we're going to run it under the tap. And the tap's going to have to be at a decent pressure. Most of the challenge of cleaning a record, I think, is pointless unless you can lift off the muck that you've disturbed by cleaning. Alright, so you can use a carbon fibre brush or whatever, you know, but with this being static, it's a static magnet, shall we say. If you're using a carbon fibre brush on a turntable or using it in your hand, if you're using it in your hand, it'll just go underneath your record and then you're just chasing the dirt. Use it on your turntable, it just covers your turntable, and then it eventually gets back on the record again. So you have to find some way of getting the dirt off the record. So there's some really common ways of doing that. There's guys who've used PVA glue, covered it in PVA glue, let it stick to everything, lift it off. There is the vacuums you can get, which is essentially just a plastic tube with a hole in it, and you need a wet and dry vacuum cleaner to get it off. To be honest with you, I'm kind of considering that as a way to go, but I don't really trust the vacuums on the disc because I think they will cause scratches. And the last one is like an ultrasonic bath, basically, and they're quite pricey because you need quite a large bath in order to get the record to sit in. The motor and whatnot isn't too bad, but the bath is like a 6 litre bath, so you're looking at 150, 160 quid. I'm not a massive valuable record collector, I just like what I like. So to me, 160 quid is better spent on a load of vinyl than it is on cleaning a load of vinyl. So this is a method I use, and as I say, some people aren't going to like this, but this is what I like to do. So, and if it works for you, then great. If you really hate it, that's fine too. You know, this is the beauty of opinion. So yeah, so I've got my 3 cloths, and what I do is, this is kind of a 3-stage process. First, I'm going to put the stuff on the record, clean it with a toothbrush in a certain way, and then we're going to rinse it off under the tap. And what you use is the pressure of the tap is used to get the muck off the record and down the sink. Okay, I hold it on the paintbrush while we do that, and then once we're done, pat it dry with one cloth, and then I'm going to dip the cloth into a separate cloth into distilled water, and I'm going to use that as a separate cloth. So I've actually got 3 cloths, and it's important to keep them separate because you have one that is used for patting dry, you have one that is used for wiping the distilled water at the end very gently. Obviously make sure you get nice soft cloths, there's no point in having scouring pads as you're just defeating the object. So I have one there next to my distilled water for wiping at the end. I have one there for blotting any distilled water right at the end, and I always fold that for some reason just so I know which one's which. And this is just used as a general drying cloth, which I'll be using after the tap water. So yeah, so let's get to this. So first thing I do is I've got my solution as I've just described, and it'd be easier if I had a spray, but generally I never really have spray bottles kicking about. As soon as you go on holiday, they all get robbed and get put in people's luggage and that. So you don't need much of this. As you can see, this does plenty of records. And now I'm going to use a toothbrush. Right, calm yourselves. So what I do is I go side to side in the grooves, keeping the toothbrush as flat as I can. I'm not really pressing that hard here, but I'm going side to side, and I just work my way all around the record. And what I do is I do this twice. So I go 360 degrees and then 360 degrees. And in my mind, with this being such a soft brush and a fine brush, we're getting into as many of the grooves as we can here. And you can be as quick or as slow as you want. As I say, I'll show you the record at the end. not going to be covered in scratches. It's not going to be covered in micro scratches, you know, nobody's going to die. And this isn't a 700 quid first pressing of Jailhouse Rock or something like that, you know. This is a couple of quid out of a Chazza. So I go all the way around twice. And with the IPA, sometimes if it's quite warm, it can want to evaporate. So all the way around. Right, now control yourselves. I do small swirls once, okay? I'm not pressing hard, I'm not pressing right down, but you need to have sufficient pressure on it in order to do its job. People are saying, you're not protecting the label, blah blah blah. I'll show you why you don't need to protect the label in a minute. And it's all to do with the properties of water. Obviously, if you're going to put water all over it, that's your own fault. You know, we're all adults. We can aim some water. That's it. So now that's done, we're going to the rinsing stage. Get your paintbrush. Lift it up by the edges and stick the paintbrush inside the spindle hole. So now, like I said, we want to rinse that muck off. So I get my cold tap on a reasonable pressure and I start off at the outside and I simply rinse it. You just got to do your best you can to not get any water on the label. I just want to show you something here. Notice how that really isn't sticking to the record. If that's happening, you haven't really got everything off. So keep going. And once you've got everything off, I'll show you what it looks like. Once you've got everything off, you notice it sticks on one solid line like that, look. Okay. And then just give that a little bit of a wiggle and just let it run off as best you can. So now we use cloth number 1 and I just blot some of this water. So this is tap water, remember. Okay, if you're precious about your labels, then just make sure you don't get any label. So I'm just blotting the biggest bits. Okay, next, get your third cloth and your second cloth. And what I do with this is I dip this into my distilled water. And you don't want much of this really. What you're doing is just trying to get rid of the minerals that are in the tap water. It's not a massive difference, but, and this is a very gentle wipe round, following the grooves. And what you're doing here is just drying this off, or not drying it off, but I suppose you're rinsing it, it's a rinse stage. And you're just making sure that any tap water that you had on a minute ago is off, and all you got left is distilled water. And then for any beads you've got here and there, it's just a blot with your third cloth, the folded one. So this shall never touch tap water or cleaning solution. And then pick it up, back with a paintbrush. And then my favourite bit that I know you're going to love, because I didn't mention it, get your wife's hairdryer. Low heat, very gentle, give it a bit of blow. Right, I'm sure a lot of you love the heater part. but record never gets warm. You're just touching it, don't worry about it, okay? And then inspect. And this thing is absolutely grade A, immaculate, okay? Not with counting scratches and everything else. Everything's off it, all the contaminants, all the dirt. You've lifted the dirt off and not just rubbed it in with a cloth. Now that's ready to play. Now obviously if you want, you can get a drying rack and let them dry on a drying rack. Totally get that. To be honest with you, for me this just speeds the process. But make sure you use distilled water. Those marks you can see there are actually small scratches. As I said, it's a charity shop one, but the results speak for themselves, and sonically it sounds a lot better as well. So apologies if you didn't like that, or it wasn't something that you want to do with your own records. Totally fine, do what you want. That works for me. It's proven through the records. I've got no problems with them. There's no micro scratches on them. You know, I'm not embedding anything in. And the way I see it, any cleaning is better than no cleaning. Don't forget, records have two sides. Distilled water. Just a little bit of a block to get rid of the big beads. That'll take longer to get rid of. And you should be left with is a kind of light sheen or light coating of distilled water now. Now what I do is you can either replace the dust cover with an anti-static one or something, but the Paul way of doing it is give it a good blow. Right, it's been good since the 70s, it'll be good for another however long. Place our record back in the sleeve, nice and gentle, and then once you're back in, a nice decent quality dust cover, ready to go back on the shelf.